It's not easy to write well.
I'm tired of trying to convince people that there was such a thing as good writing and that their writing could be better.
Writing is hard. It's about blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, philosophers tend to value clarity and precision, really. Clarity of expression, precision of expression. So we tend not to be the most literary bunch, I'll say, the most poetic bunch.
The ability to be able to put your ideas on paper that allows for your ideas to be passed around in that way, to last a lot longer than a mere oral conversation could last. And for philosophy, that's really, really relevant. I mean, we have texts that come from well before BCE, in the 300-400s BCE, that we're still using and that are very, very relevant. And we wouldn't be able to consider what those philosophers had said unless we had it in writing.
So I'm an English major and I'm running an academic computing department. I've had a lot of different types of jobs, and invariably I get those jobs and I do well with those jobs because I know how to communicate.
You can't always even know what you think until you're able to write it down. And nothing makes you a better writer than when you have to force a big thought into a small space.
I write occasionally scholarly articles and chapters, and I'm finishing a book even now that's taken me all of 5 blessed years to write. And mostly though, I write an interminable stream of email and memos that nobody reads.
I write a lot. I've written blogs, I've written books, I've written short stories, screenplays.
I'm a writer of all kinds of stuff. I'm a writer of really boring memos. I'm a writer of papers, research papers and things like that. I write emails like you can't believe.
I know from experience that students in my classes tend to do well if they take good notes. So I typically assign take-home essays, so most of the writing in my classes occurs outside the room. Take-home essays, so I tell the class that, again, experience shows that if you take good notes in class, you'll do fine on the take-home essays.
Okay, so writing in philosophy is really important because it's a way for ideas and thoughts to be passed on over time, and so you have to be able to explain your ideas clearly in order to be able to pass those ideas along and have people understand what you're trying to say.
Is to make sure that when the class is over, you're a better writer than when you came in. It's a tool to help students, kind of process, clarify, and crystallize what they think about a work. And then B, it's to learn how to translate that moment of clarity into something that can be communicated effectively. I have my students pursuing a very particular kind of writing form. I call it the 2-page, 500-word, thesis-driven, argumentative essay.
It says, here's what I'm going to do, and then the body of paper does, you do that, and then the conclusion you say, here's what I've done. Not exactly, great literature, but that's generally the style I suggest.
Typically in a paper I have the students examine an argument, and so I lay out a very specific outline, give me an introduction and tell me specifically what they're doing in the paper, and then provide an explanation of the argument, consider an objection that might be raised against it, and then go on to try to develop a response that might be offered to the objection. And then in the last part, I ask the students to take a step back and assess the argument, the objection, and response to determine whether they think that the argument still works to support the conclusion or whether the objection works to refute it.
So actually the most important writing assignment that we have is an assignment where you're going to stand up and talk in front of a lot of other people, but you have to have written and pulled together all of your research and your notes to make that presentation.
I do always require rewrites, so in a semester's worth of work, if I'm assigning 4 take-home papers, I always allow rewrites. In fact, I usually require rewrites of the first 3 for anything less than an A-.
cover it in revisions and suggestions and comments and then send it back to the student. And the student can do that as many times as they want up until that rough draft due date.
Actually, the most important thing in my class is that the students give feedback to each other. Because I think they get they're most convinced by feedback from each other.
But there is no one kind of writing. What's really important is that students learn how to write in different voices and not think that they can use exactly the same voice and exactly the same structure for every context.
Genre sort of comes out of people's interactions with each other when it's communication writing. You know, a memo, you can't really write a memo the first day on the job. You sort of have to get a sense of what do memos look like at this office and how do people write memos to each other.
I think that different ways of writing can allow for your ideas to be expressed in different ways, and different medium and different ways of expressing it are going to be important at different times.
So I can't say that I really, in my time here, have really assigned a wide variety of genres. But as a reader, I can say you're missing out on a lot of pleasure and happiness and satisfaction if you don't read widely in different genres.
You can't get good grades if you can't write. I don't care what the subject is. Biology, forget it. You could have a great experiment. You can't write a lab report, it's not going to work. So, grades track writing, always. In terms of career, there is absolutely, nothing that will be more important. There are other things as important, but nothing will be more important than your ability to be clear in your writing in whatever job you have.
Philosophers tend to think, I tend to think that you can't really express yourself precisely, orally, verbally, right, maybe even the first or second time around. So there's something about committing your thoughts to writing that encourages precision.
It's not easy to write well. I mean, it takes discipline. It also takes a willingness to take a risk, and play with your sentences. I mean, it's something a lot of people, all of us, suffer from. I love my wordsitis, where you write it down once and you think, look at that, that's my sentence, and you have to learn to let go.
Most people need to become a writer, and most people don't enter college realizing that there's such a long way to go.